Hello everyone, and welcome to Farm to Your Table. I'm your host, Sean Jones. Some of you may know me. I used to own Jones 212 Bakery and Cafe, then Jones Valhalla. I now work at the MHA in Chautauqua County, where I do a weekly cooking show called Cooking and Recovery. It's every Friday. It's sponsored by St. Luke's Episcopal Church and Farm Fresh Foods. So they have asked me to come here and to show you how to cook your food that you just got in your basket. Yeah, basket. I looked at Luke for approval. Yeah. So in your basket. So next what we're going to do, I'm pretty sure all of you got both videos. First we made a soup. Now what I'm going to do is make a garlic and sage meatball to go on top of a vegetable medley is what we'll kind of call it, with all your fresh vegetables. So the first thing we're going to do though is make the meatballs and get those ready. So what I'm going to do is take my sage, my sprigs of sage, and I'm just going to, you don't have to use the stems, I do personally. There is flavor in the stems, so I do use them. Okay, it's a little bit more bitter than the actual leaf, but I still like to use it because in something like this, it can really carry through the whole meatball. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to take my knife, okay, and very carefully just go through and mince it up as fine as I can. Just take your time. Let your knife kind of do the work and slowly move over, okay? Once you've gone through once, you know, if you take your time and go slow, it'll kind of stay together, okay? And just kind of take your hand, shift it to the side, and come at it from another angle. And it's going to mince it up even more. And once you're starting to get small like that, just kind of take your hands and your knife, push it together, and again, just keep going through. You can go through as many times as you want. I'm only going to do a couple. So there we go. Now I don't suggest using like your food processor or something like that because it'll just turn to mush. Okay? So just use your knife to do it. Just put it into your mixing bowl where we're going to mix our meatballs. Next up, because it is sage and garlic, right? So I'm going to take, let's grab 4 cloves of garlic. Yeah, you know what? There's 5 left. Let's just use all 5. You can never have too much garlic is what I say. So now to peel the garlic, everyone's got different ways to do this. This is the way I do it, okay? Get the little bit of the paper you can get off. You've got that little part of the root there. Chop that right off, okay? Put your clove off to the side of each one. This is also going to help you break it up. And you see the way I do that in a second, because that kind of holds the whole clove together, right? Those little pieces. So you want those off. Alright. So now, to peel the clove of garlic, you could sit there for 45 minutes and pick it all off. Sometimes it comes off real easy, sometimes it does not. One way to get it off, pretty easy, take your clove, take the fat part of your knife, set it on there, don't smush it all the way down, just press a little bit. You can hear it pop a little bit. I don't know if you could hear it on the recording, but you'll hear it. And then it just peels right off. And there you go, the skin's off, you've got a nice clove of garlic. So we're just going to do that to each one of our cloves. Now the best part about doing this is your fingers will smell like garlic for the next 18 days. But that's okay, I don't mind.
Keeps the vampires away.
That's right, keeps the vampires away. Now, if you don't want your hands to smell like garlic for the next 14 days, or no, what did I say, 18 days, you can put on a pair of gloves, or immediately wash your hands with good dish soap, and it should take most of it off, the smell. But if you let it sit, I guarantee you're going to smell it for days.
My favorite thing to do on a Sunday morning before church is to get my hands nice and garlicky and then touch the communion wafer so people get a little bit of zing.
I love that, Luke. That's a good idea. Jeez, these wafers, these communion wafers are delicious this week.
Little Parmesan cheese on top too.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
I like it. It's kind of, well, it's basically, it'd be garlic bread, right? Well, because the wafers are made from bread, so there you go.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got them all peeled. If you watched the first video, you've now noticed Luke's loosened up a little bit, so this video could be a lot more fun. It's because he got to eat that soup, so now he's happy. Okay, so now to chop up the garlic, what I'm going to do, same kind of thing as when I did to peel it, right? Put the fat part of my knife right on there, but this time I am going to smush it all the way down. And you see it flattens it right out, breaks it up. Okay, but I'm going to do it with each one. Put them together in a nice little pile. Oops. Just like that. Okay, now that I've got them in my little pile, I'll take my knife. Same kind of thing we did with the sage. Just go through, let your knife do the work, just chop it up. Okay? Okay. There we go with our garlic. So now, take my little mixing bowl that's already got the sage in it. Put my garlic right in there. Okay, so now what we're going to do, take our package of meat, just take your knife, open it up, and dump it right in there, right on top of the garlic and the sage. Alright, I'm going to add just a little bit of pepper, just put it on top of the meat, and then a little bit of salt. Right on there. Now, just take your hands and just incorporate everything. So kind of move it around so that you get that sage and garlic all worked into there. Okay? Now, if you want to, you could add a little bit of breadcrumb. Okay? You could add a little bit of egg to kind of hold it together. You could add cheese if you want to. I mean, it's really up to you. We're just using what we've got here. But as you move it around, you can feel it starting to kind of tighten up a little bit, which that's what you want it to do. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I just happen to have this little bowl over here. So I'm going to roll up my meatballs and put them in there for right now. Okay, so what do you want to do? You just take however big you want to make them, that's 100% up to you. Okay? Take your meat, put it in your hand, cup your hands, okay, like this, and just slowly roll it around. You don't want to press down hard. That's going to smush it apart. You just want to roll it around, okay? Form it into a ball. It's not going to be perfect. That's all right. Okay? But there we go. Nice little meatball. Same thing. Smushing it together just a little bit. And then rolling it around. And don't worry if they're not all the exact same size or anything like that. And like I said, you can make them really big. You can make them tiny. It's up to you. Just remember, the bigger they are, the longer they're going to have to cook. So, and the way we're cooking them, honestly, you don't want them too big. You want them to be kind of small. And you'll see why after when I'm cooking them in the pan. Just roll them around in your hand until it gets kind of tight. And you'll feel it. You'll feel it start to come together in your hands. And that's why I'm saying don't press real hard. If you press too hard, it's going to break apart. If you go nice and slow, it's going to bring itself together. And last but not least, we got this guy. This one's going to be just a tad bit bigger. That's okay. This one's for me. Luke's not allowed to have this one. Alright. So there's our meatballs. Next up, what I'm going to do is get all of our vegetables ready for the medley. like that. Okay, so now next we're going to do is we're going to cut up our vegetables for the vegetable medley. That's basically just what I'm calling it because you got a lot of vegetables in your basket, which is good. You know, if you wanted to, you could put all of this over pasta at the end. You'll see what we've got. But it's kind of cool just to make it just like this. So you will see. The first thing we're going to do is chop up our onion. Okay? On the last video, I diced it. I'm not going to do that this time. But so cut off your two ends. Cut it down the middle. Alright, peel that off. The skin. Alright, now what I'm going to do is just cut this into nice little strips. Okay, so I've got my onion. I'm going to turn to the side. Remember, your knife is designed a certain way to work a certain way. So a chef's knife is rounded at the top, right? So that it never has to leave the cutting board. Okay? You just slowly glide it through. I want these to be kind of thin, so I'm taking my time. Letting the knife kind of do the work, moving itself over. When it gets small, you can turn it, lay it down on that flat side, and then finish it off. So there's our onions. Now there's a couple things I'm going to cook together. So I'm going to chop those up, put them in here, and then we'll start kind of cooking it behind it. Okay, but we've got our onions. Next up, you've got a couple of nice little squash. We had squash in the last one as well. I'm going to, what kind of squash is this again?
Delicata.
So we've got the delicata squash, and then you've got a small butternut squash. So what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to cut off these ends, okay, because you don't need them. And this guy's nice and little. I'm going to use my knife to peel it. You could use a peeler if you want, but I'm going to use my knife. Just take your time. Don't go too fast. You make your first cut, and you can kind of see how deep the skin goes. And that's where you can make your next cut. Don't worry about those pieces at the bottom. I'll show you how to take care of them. Right now we're just getting the majority of this off.
Some delicata squash you can actually eat the skin. It's pretty light, lighter than a butternut, for instance, if you'd like.
That's Luke speaking.
That's what we do at home, in my house.
So yeah, you can eat the outside skin, but for this I'm not going to. So now I'm just taking off those other little pieces of the skin, turning it on its side. Toss those away or save them and eat them like Luke wants you to. Now this I'm just going to take and cut it right in half. Okay? And there's all of our little seeds, right? So I cut it in half. There's our seeds. I'll take a spoon and just clean that up. Now if you wanted to, you could save those seeds and roast them. Or you could save those seeds and grow your own squash in your garden next year. It's up to you. But we're just tossing these ones out. So now what I'm going to do with these, I'm going to lay them down. I'm not going to cut it into strips. I'm going to turn it on its side like this and come down and get those nice little half moons. That's kind of fun. With the onion. And now I'm going to do the same with the butternut squash. Cut off that end. Cut off that end. It's the uneven shape again, so I'm going to take my knife to cut it in half to try to get it as even as I can. Okay? So now the seeds are in there. I'm going to take my spoon, get them out. Now, same thing like I did with the last one. Cut it in half. And just cut it into these nice little slices. Now I'm doing them pretty thin. I want them pretty thin so that they will basically cook at the same rate as the onions. Okay, that's why I'm doing it this way. I want them pretty thick. And now the same with these two pieces. Whoa. those right in here with the onion. So now, like I said, we're going to be kind of cooking the vegetables in stages. So I'm going to have a couple different mixing bowls. So the first one we've got is the onions and the 2 kinds of squash, so that they kind of cook at the same rate. Next up, I'm going to do the peppers. These are the peppers that we got. Not sure what you got, but that's okay. You can kind of do it, you still be able to do it the same way I'm about to do it. Now I want to cut these peppers into julienne slices. So what I'm going to do, take my knife, I'm going just past where the stem is, okay? Where the tip of the stem is. I'm going to take it into the pepper to where I can basically see where the stem starts, okay? Take my knife and just come down through. See, it's still holding together, okay? The reason why I do that, so that I can do this. Take your fingers, reach right down in there, and you can pull out the majority of the seeds and this part that you just don't eat. I'm not sure the exact name of it.
It's piffy.
Piffy?
Pith. Yeah, I think it's called pith.
The pith.
The pith. Yeah.
What do you know? Luke knows what I don't. I've been cooking for a very long time. I've never heard that, but that's okay. Luke has. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this pepper. I'm going to cut this end off as well, okay, so that I can then just run a line down through it with my knife. I'm just going to carefully lay my knife on it, come across, and cut off the rest of the pith.
Yeah, P-I-T-H, pith. I just Googled it. That's right.
Huh? Oh, you Googled it.
Yeah, Googled it.
So I just call it the inside.
The guts.
Yeah, the gut of the pepper, because I just want the meat of the pepper. Okay, so now I am going to use these pieces, but they're not going to be as pretty as these ones to cut it into julienne strips. So now I'm cutting that in half, okay? Now I've got the nice long pieces. I can just come through and cut it into the strips. Take your time when you get to the end. Take this piece, same kind of thing. Oops. Be careful because it'll wiggle around, so that, you know, really take your time. That's why, honestly, I hate to say it, but in the restaurant business, a lot of times what we save this stuff for is just to make like vegetable stock or something like that, or honestly, sometimes it just gets thrown away. That's not good though, because you can make a lot of different things. You know, it's still pepper, you can still use it. So that's why I'm showing you how to do it for this sake. I want you to use every little piece. So come through, same thing, reach your fingers down in there, pull out the pith and the seeds. Garbage bag keeps falling. Cut off that other end again. Pull that out. Seeds that were still in there. Alright, just like the last one, I'm going to take my knife, cut it right down there, lay it on my pepper, slowly slide it across to get that off. It's okay to pull that apart like that. Can you eat this? Yes. It's a little bitter though, so I'm not going to keep it. So now these ones I'm just going to come through and do these nice little small strips. The yellow ones were a little bit bigger, but it's okay. We can vary it in size. It's not that bad of a thing. Right, Luke?
Right. Different textures.
There you go.
Different strokes for different folks, like they say.
Well, and the different colors. So like the yellow will be nice and bright and long. The red will be a little bit shorter. You'll see what I mean once we plate it. Sometimes I do things when I'm cooking that I really can't explain. It's just, that's how my head works, and that's why I do it this way. But I promise you, the results are going to be good. Let's put out the strips on this end of the pepper. Take your time when you get to the end, right? And then these nice little pieces. That in there.
One there. Now we're rolling that. Yeah.
So now the last bit we're going to slice up is our char and our tomatoes. Okay? Like I said, you're going to see how this works at the very end, but I want each thing to cook at a different speed. Now, that being said too, I mean, each thing does cook differently. So if I threw the chard in with the onions and the squash, this will just basically turn to mush by the time this is done cooking. So you'll see why I'm doing this when you see the end result. All right? So all I'm going to do with the char is I am just going to hold it together in a bunch, take my knife, get these nice pieces of the stem off first because I am not putting them in this bowl. I am putting those in with the peppers, right? Because that's a little bit tougher than the leaf itself. Yes, I know there's part of the stem there, but just trust me, this is tough. So I'm putting it over in there with the peppers. Now for this, for the leaves, just bunching it up, taking my knife, coming through, but I want it bigger pieces like that. Put that in our bowl. I'm going to take our tomato. Where's my little knife? Okay, to core out my tomato, I'm taking a little paring knife. If you have a paring knife, you can do this. If you have a steak knife, no, don't use a steak knife. Never mind, I said that. Get a paring knife. It comes in handy. So take your paring knife, kind of poke it in there, slowly at an angle, twist your tomato around, okay, and you can get that right off. Because I want to keep all that niceness that's down inside. And now I'm just going to take my knife, cut my tomato in half, and in half, right? So now we've got quarters, and now I'm going to cut it down into eighths. I want that to stay together, and you'll see the same thing at the very end. So I'm just going to put this in with the chard gently so it just kind of sits. Okay, now let's go over here and start cooking. Okay, so now we're going to start cooking. I'm going to turn on both of my burners here. These ones are really, really hot. I'm just kind of turning them down. And yes, I'm starting everything at the same time here. I'm going to be doing my meatballs in the back and then the vegetable stuff in the front. Okay. So I've got my little pan back there for the meatballs. Got my olive oil. Remember, you don't need a ton because the meat has fat, right? So that's going to come out. This is my pan for the vegetables. I'm going to put the rest of that olive oil in there. And I'm also going to add the butter, the vegetable pan. Alright, so I've got my olive oil back there for the meatballs. It's going to start to warm up. I'm just going to take our meatballs and just set them right in there. So these are like fried meatballs. Alright, so we've got our olive oil and our butter in there starting to go. We're going to add our onions and our squash right to the pan. As always, a little salt and pepper. It's alright, don't worry, it's going to be okay. I promise. Remember, we still got a lot more food to add to this, so we're alright. And there's a little salt. Alright, so we're just letting everything cook. I'm just kind of moving around the onions and the squash. You can see our meatballs are doing good back there. Grab this neat little spoon I found. Just kind of move them a little bit. Now if you go to move them and they don't move, don't force it. That means it's not ready to move. Just let it be. You're going to see I'm not going to play with these meatballs that much at all. I'm just going to let them do their thing back there. The more you move stuff around, the colder it gets, right? So that's the longer it's going to take to cook. That being said, you don't want it to just sit there and burn, right? But you don't want to move it around too much. Just let it do its thing. It's cooking. So you can, if you look at your meatballs, well, I'm looking at my meatballs, everything's been cooking for about a minute and a half, 2 minutes. So my meatballs, you can see that they're starting to turn that brown coming around the edge. That means that I can probably scooch them over. See? And they've got that nice sear on them on the other side. So I'm just going to flip them over. Do the same kind of thing. Let them sit. You have a lid. You can put it on there if you want. This stove is really hot, so I'm not going to put a lid on it. But also, too, remember, I mean, this is nice, fresh beef. If you want to cook these medium rare, by all means, you can. This is good beef.
Local.
Yep,
Chautauqua County.
good local Chautauqua County beef. So I'm just flipping them over, letting them do their thing. So I'm kind of stirring this up. Same kind of thing I said with the soup, with the squash. As you're moving it, you can kind of feel where it's at texture-wise. Like you can touch it and still feel it's kind of tough. But that's all right. I want this stuff to kind of slowly cook down because what's happening, if you cook it too fast, it's just going to burn and cook fast. If you take your time, what happens is the heat slowly pulls all the natural sugars out of the onions and out of the squash. That's going to add a lot of flavor to your dish. If you cook it too fast, it's not going to pull those sugars out. And it's not going to taste the same. Just let it go nice and slow, move it around every now and then. Like I said, don't keep moving it. You just kind of move it and then kind of flatten it out and just let it go. So you can see this has been cooking for a little bit. Again, it's been, I don't know how Luke's going to edit it, but this has been cooking for about a minute and a half. A little bit more. It's starting to soften up, and also too, you can see we're starting to turn, not burnt, but like a nice golden brown around the edges of the squash. Okay, I don't want it completely cooked before I add the next ingredients. I just want it to be about halfway there. So what I'm going to add next is our peppers and the stems to the chard, right? Just add that all right in there. Now, because I added another ingredient, I'm going to add a little more salt. Spread it out amongst it. This time I'm going to put a little bit of the pepper in my hand to make sure I don't put too much. And same thing, just kind of sprinkle it in there. And then just stir it all around. See, this is beautiful colors. You've got the white of the onion, the yellow and the orange of the squash, and you've got the red, orange, and yellow pepper. Not sure what peppers you got in your basket. I'm assuming it's going to be the same, but maybe you were lucky enough to get a green pepper. That'd be pretty in here, right? But you just kind of move it around. Now again, the meatballs, I'm not moving them. I'm just letting them cook. You don't have to keep playing with them. Just let them be. Let them do their thing. As long as there's not smoke pouring out of there, you know they're not burning. Just let them cook.
So what you're saying is don't play with your balls?
Don't play with, that's right, Luke, don't play with your balls while they're cooking. So this stuff's been cooking for about 5 minutes, and me and Luke had a great rant session. But anyways, as you can see, the peppers are cooking up nicely. The onion and the squash has definitely softened up a lot more, right? And if you can see in the bottom of the pan, I'm just going to kind of move it to the side. You see that? That's the sugars that I was telling you about. It's all cooking up really nice. Our meatballs, I haven't touched them once. They are just cooking. There's no reason to move them around. I mean, every now and then, maybe just kind of move them so that there's just, you know, shift them kind of thing. But you don't really have to do much else, you know? I mean, you can see if I flip one over. Oh, let's take this one. One of them's going to flip easy. There we go. See, I mean, look at that. It's just cooking perfect. Actually, there we go. I've got some tongs over here, so I'm just going to kind of flip each one over. And I mean, you can see that they're just cooking very nicely. And the thing is another thing when you don't move them around like crazy, it gives it the opportunity to sear like that. what that does is that locks all that flavor into the meatball, okay? If you're moving it around too much, the juice, the fats, the flavor are going to drown out into the pan. That's losing it. You don't want to lose that. You want that to stay. Kind of like if you were cooking meatballs in a sauce, that's different. All that stays in the sauce. But when you're cooking it in a pan, you know, you don't want this pan to be filled this much with juice when you're done with it. Because that's all of your flavor. You want your flavor to stay in there. So now, we're almost at the final stages of this. I want these to cook down just a little bit more before we end our last part, or not end our last part, add our last ingredient, because that's going to go real quick and then we're going to plate it. We're just going to give our meatballs a couple more seconds and then we'll be good to go. All right, you can pause it. I'll go grab a... Okay, so you can see this is all cooked down really nicely. So now literally what I'm going to do, take our last thing, right? Our 8 tomato slices and our chard, put it in there, okay? Move it around a little bit. Remember, that chard is going to cook really fast. The tomatoes aren't going to cook as fast as that. But I kind of wanted to leave those kind of whole, just because there's that great flavor in the tomato. But I did want it to warm up. Just kind of moving it around. Now again, because I added more ingredients, I'm going to add a little more salt. Kind of sprinkle it on there. A little much. Kind of move it around. Okay, and I'm going to kill the heat on this right now before we plate it. So like I said, you don't want that to cook for super long. Okay, putting that off to the side. Okay, I'm going to move my meatballs up to the front. Remember, we got our honey. Okay, so what I'm going to do, just going to add a little bit of this honey around onto the meatballs. Our meatballs are cooked, by the way, okay? We've got all that flavor sitting in that pan, right? Remember I was talking about that, the stuff that kind of comes out. So now I'm just going to kind of move this around. You can see that honey's loosening up. And it's loosening up all that flavor on the bottom, okay? Yes, I still have the heat on, but I'm going to cut it off in just a second. Off. Get it off of where it was warm. Okay, but it was enough to deglaze the pan. That's what it's called, is deglazing the pan. When you add like a honey, or you can deglaze it with wine, something like that. What that does is that loosens up all that flavor that's on the bottom of the pan. Okay? As you can see, I'm kind of rolling the meatballs around in it. Because as the honey cools, it's going to solidify again, right? So I want that to all kind of be on those meatballs. All right, meet you over here to plate it up. All right, so here we go. We're going to plate it up. So we've got our dish here, okay? I'm going to take, put it right there in the center of the plate. Don't try to be perfect, okay? But don't be sloppy about it either. Just kind of let it fall right on top of each other. Notice I have not put any of the tomato on it yet. There's a reason for that, okay? But there we go. Look at all those beautiful colors. You got the peppers and the squash and the chard and everything. I mean, that just looks gorgeous, okay? And maybe take a couple of your tomato slices and just put them right on there. Now we can turn around. Take a couple of your meatballs. Set them right on there. Tip your pan ever so slightly. Don't dump it, right? Remember we added that honey. And it's got all that flavor. Now you don't want a ton of it on there, right? But just kind of take it, just put a little, oops, just put a little dollop of that right on top of the meatball. And then just a little bit around that outside. And there you go. So that is our dish of our farmer's market vegetable medley with garlic and sage honey glazed meatballs. So Luke will be over here in a second to take the first test, or taste test, and we'll see what he thinks. All right?
All right, Sean.
All right. Thank you, sir. Luke,
Let's try.
You do the honors, though.
I'm gonna get this piece of some vegetables here first. Oh, some chard. The peppers without the pith.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
You're not gonna. Oh, you got to get it with the meatballs.
Well, I'm going to.
No. Come on. So I'm gonna do it a little bit different than Luke.
I saved the best part for last. You see.
Well, I want to get it all. This is just me personally. I want to get it all together first. But you can do it like Luke did it. That's fine. But I'm going to take that nice piece of meatball. Now, see, I've got a big chunk here, so I'm just going to shove it all in my mouth. But that's okay. I'm going to step away from the camera so you can't see it. But I think he's got that camera going too.
I do. Yeah. Busted. All right, let's try the meatball. Looks good. It is. It is.
Dude.
It's awesome.
This is good.
Yeah. Oh yeah. This is what you want. After a long day of work, you're hungry.
You know, guys, I really don't toot my own horn too much. But this is freaking good.
Mm-hmm.
This is really good.
Mm-hmm. It's delicious.
Like, just trust me on this, and I think Luke can back me up on this. Take your time making this, and you are going to be so happy with the end result.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm telling you guys, make sure you do that honey at the end to glaze the pan, because that just, I mean, that pulled it all together.
Oh yeah, no doubt.
I mean, it really, really did. All right, so there you go, guys. I hope you really enjoy. Yeah, hopefully I'll see you guys again. But yeah, Luke, anything else?
Bon appetit.